right. I think we are live.
Sweet.
And sweaty. Sweaty and live.
Yeah. Rain season, I guess, is kind of officially over. There was like that last week was just...
Yeah, it was brutal. So, now we're getting...
Only upside of that was I collected a ton of rainwater for my carnivorous plants.
Oh,
I just put a big old bucket out in the parking lot.
Oh, nice.
And then tried to lug it up a bunch of
Yeah,
steps.
because it was just torrential.
Torrential rain almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I wonder what that's going to mean for typhoon season. That's going to be fun.
Probably nothing. Hey, welcome to climate change.
Yeah, right. Fun stuff. Yeah, so I think we're good. Yeah, and YouTube is finally starting to relent on the copyright claims on the music. So we may have our original music back soon. I'm just going to wait. There's about 15 of them that I'm waiting to process.
Right.
So maybe another month, and then we'll go back to Jackson's music.
Nice.
But that was a heartbreaker. But it's all automated.
Yeah.
So eventually it will let go. So let me just double check here if we're actually live.
That would be funny to just record everything. And it's like, we weren't live.
There's a little thing there that says we're live, but as far as the reality of the internet, so it's. And back to so solo cast last week, and those are always really weird because I'm like watching the clock so much, and I'm like, did I do enough? Is this enough? Is this enough? But I do know now that I am responsible for at least 5% of the hate that comes into.
Oh, really?
This. Only me, and we get the most dislikes.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you'll have to do a solo cast.
I was trying to figure that out. Like, if you're responsible for 5%, does that mean I am responsible for like more or less? Or not? Yeah.
Yeah, just the way that ratios break down. It's like I was like, whoa, okay. So I guess that's all me then. There's nobody else to blame for, for those dislikes.
Yeah, let me not do a solo cast because then we won't get official numbers, right?
Yeah, that's like Disney streaming. It's like, hey, maybe we made $1 billion. But yeah. All right. Yep. We are all good.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'll make sure I keep the sound down so we're not listening to ourselves.
Oh yeah.
All right. Good. Yeah. I think that's all set. Yeah. Hopefully all of our notifications went out. We'll see as we go. Oof. All right. Ready to start this crazy thing. Oh, actually, I need this. I've got a multitude of mice behind my game here. All right. Welcome to the Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And this week on the Weekly, Chaosium acquires Cthulhu Britannica and World War Cthulhu from Cubicle 7. Modiphius releases a Dune Sourcebook and a starter set next year. Lupin III RPG by Magnetic Press Play. It's the 50th anniversary of that character, 1971. That's insane. And Goblin Slayer gets an English translation, the anime, everyone's favorite fantasy-based anime.
Right. Okay.
All right, so let's start with a little Cthulhu. Yep. So Chaosium just announced that they have reacquired, like the, I guess the rights kind of lapsed, and anything that was produced under license kind of reverts back to Chaosium according to whatever their license was. So they, Cubicle 7 developed Cthulhu Britannica and World War Cthulhu. And so Britannica was produced from 2009 to 2017, 12 titles that explored like Cthulhu mythos in the British Isles, basically.
Okay.
And it won some awards, so it was popular, and kind of like diversifying the moving it to another English-speaking country.
Yeah, that's the correct term. Yeah.
And World War Cthulhu published 2013 to 2017's 8 titles, and they focused on World War II or Cold War era Cthulhu. So that was more worldwide, or at least European.
Was that more like Cthulhu set during the World War II era, or were you kind of expected to play? Did they do like that weird war kind of mashup thing, where is it more like...
I'm not sure, if there was coming, because I haven't seen any of the titles yet, because that's been covered, like Modiphius has their Cthulhu, and that has an RPG. The book is actually coming out next month. That has an RPG now, which started out as a miniatures game.
Oh,
Yeah, started out as like a skirmish game. So, both lines have won a lot of awards, and it was just the license ended in 2017, so that stuff reverts back. And Chaosium is going to re-release these two lines with new art and new layout to kind of match maybe 7th edition.
Cool.
So it's going to be all updated to 7th. So I guess that may have been for 6th, yeah.
Right.
Some of the older ones. And we'll see. And then some new titles planned to kind of supplement that. So yeah, a little bit more in that. There's a lot of like variation, like Dark Ages, and modern.
Well, it is public domain now, right? So you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Why not? Except if you mix it with tech and end up with Cthulhu tech, because from what I hear, that is a horrible game.
Oh,
the actual Cthulhu tech game, right? Yeah. Okay, you'd think, let's just like hop in a Jaeger or something and battle some kind of Cthulhu monster.
Right.
Apparently, some of that stuff gets pretty gross.
Oh,
anyway.
Wow, interesting. Well, gross is coming up.
Ooh,
we'll get that later. And then Modiphius. Speaking of Modiphius, they just announced the Arrakis Sourcebook. So they're going to do Sand and Dust, which is their brand new sourcebook for their Dune RPG. And of course, in both the standard and collector's edition, because they went all out with the core book with the covers for each of the 4 major houses, and people buy them. So it's a thing.
That's the thing, right? Like we can kind of scoff at them if we want. People keep buying them, so companies keep producing them. So why not?
Yeah, and there is like people. I was watching the review of something just recently, and someone was like, this is produced so lavishly. This is so beautiful. I would never take this to the table.
Right.
I would never be flipping through this crazily at the table. So it's a very funny thing. So I think there is a certain level of just archivists, that just want beautiful art books, the nicest version they could get of these rule sets in their like library, and then what they take to the table may just be a tablet with a PDF or printouts and things.
I can't laugh at that idea because I've done the same thing, right? I've said like, ooh, kind of like fancy hardback. Not going to use it at the table, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes hardbacks are a little bit unwieldy, or like you said, it's so lavishly or nicely produced, you kind of go, I don't want to like ding this up.
Right.
So let me get an extra soft back copy or something. So I completely understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really feel that until we did the Dune playtest, and that was just like basically a Word doc that you print out, but it had big margins, and I was highlighting and scribbling all over it. And I'm like, wow, I wish I could do this to every rule book I have, because it makes the GMing process so much nicer when you're just referring to your notes and you've got nice highlighted things for what you wanted to.
So what you're saying is let's move away from that like single column 10-point font from the old OSR stuff. It's like wide margins, stuff you can scribble on, notes. Yeah,
that was nice. Because as like characters and stuff developed, I was like, oh, he's angry, he's dead. It was nice.
He's angry, he's dead. Yeah,
it was nice to. And when I went back to that, I'd be like, wait. Let me try to recall. So they're also talking about a starter set, and they didn't call it a starter set. They were calling it a beginner's box kind of thing.
Hey, let's keep that alliteration.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Beginner campaign.
Oh,
set.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Ruin it.
Beginner campaign set. So Agents of Dune. Okay. And so it's everything you need to play the game in the box. Dice, the starter rules, and a beginning campaign. And that's going to be next year, and probably just as a getting into the game as a gateway into the game, because Modiphius produces those really nice core books, but handing that to someone is like, oh, okay, that's
mistake.
Yeah, it's going to be some reading.
Like we learned before, even if someone's into like super crunchy board games, don't just drop a giant book of them and go make a character. They're like, know what? I'm out. Yeah.
Yes.
But if they kind of, I forget when the movie's coming out, relatively soon, I think, but I'm sure they are hoping to onboard people into the Dune role-playing game from the movie, though let's face it, people who are going to go see the movie are probably familiar with the franchise and are probably familiar with RPGs, right? But a beginner, like everything you need in the box, plus a campaign to play is a smart idea, because people who are just getting into the hobby, I was about to say they're going to need something to do, but like some people could make an adventure. That's the thing that's going to be hardest to make, right? So like, play this.
Oh yeah,
right? And it'll, if they're smart, or if they really aim it at beginners, it might be we'll teach you to play, as you go through it, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that helps a lot. I think D&D did a good job with that. It's like and I think a lot of people are doing that with their quick starts and stuff. Kind of like learn as you play.
Right.
So, and to go along with the, of course, the collector's source book is more dice. So we're getting the Atreides and Harkonnen dice. Right. So they will match the custom covers of your previously purchased collector's edition. So you're going to have a lot of coordination on the table. All right. Yeah, so Lupin III. So, probably one of the most long-running popular characters, kind of adult characters, right. But humorous. So kind of the master thief. It was a parody kind of based on the French novels, the French master thief novels from the 60s. And so this is the grandson, and he just happens to be Japanese, or
all right.
And but it's a really lovable character, great voice actor. And if anybody knows this, probably their first exposure to it was the Miyazaki movie. So Miyazaki did for Studio Ghibli, kind of a sweetened kind of.
Oh, really?
Little bit nice. The action was really great. The action, of course, the setting and animation was amazing. But he's a little bit more of a womanizer, a little bit more of a jokester, and a little cruder. And that didn't come across, of course, in the Ghibli movie. But the kind of scale and globe trotting of it did. So if you know Lupin, you know that from that character. So Magnetic Press Play, so we mentioned them before. So they were just a publisher of comics, moving into tabletop, and they're really moving into tabletop.
Oh, wow,
they're going pretty hard on a lot of the projects that they're working on. So they, with TMS Entertainment, will be releasing a RPG based on that, which they're calling a fast-paced, globe-trotting, master thief RPG.
As you would want, yeah.
Yeah, and so if it is jobs that you're doing and you have to figure out how to infiltrate, and it's that could be really fun. And it's going to be, of course, the D6, the West End Games. Yeah, they're using the D6. They're calling it the magnetic variant. So I think they're doing a couple of things. They're changing it a little bit, maybe for action. They have so maybe the function of the wild die.
Right, the wild die,
works a little differently in their version of it, just to maybe suit what they're wanting to do with the action. So in October will be the 50th anniversary. So they'll release details then. They're going to do a coffee table book of the history of Lupin, there's like 250 episodes of the TV animation, and then several movies, and then the manga forever. Yeah, Monkey Punch is the manga artist that did that. He passed away a few years back, but he's been doing that character forever. It was kind of a standard in Japan. I think Sunday nights at like 5:00. Okay. For like a couple decades, that show was on. It was just like a staple of Japanese weekend television. And so it'll be fun to see what they do, and if they get access to great artwork, great classic artwork. If they're doing that book, they obviously are going to be given the artwork and nice things to decorate that game with. So the game's going to have a lot of nice illustration and character work.
Yeah, it's funny. As long as I've been here, I don't think I've ever watched a Lupin episode. Like wow. I know the characters. Like I couldn't tell you their names, but just from being here, I've just like kind of soaked up. I wonder what the game is going to play like. If it's going to be the closest other game I can think of is probably like Leverage, right? Like, okay, you're a team of criminals. You kind of have all these like different roles to play, but you're not bad, right? It's kind of more like action, jokey kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I see it possibly playing like Leverage, and I wonder. I guess you would play the characters from the series. Yeah, or those types. Yeah, they don't specify. There's not details really yet about what they're doing with the system or what they're doing, with the mechanics. But it'll be fun to see how because if you're doing Lupin-like characters, I mean, if they have pre-gens of the classic characters, that would be really fun because that's 4 established characters that people kind of know, what to expect, like a sharpshooter, a samurai, cat suit wearing. Wasn't it like second story worker kind of thing?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so so it should be fun. And the movies, especially the more recently, the movies do kind of go between pretty dramatic, pretty life and death stuff, and then humor. Right. So they got a little more serious. Some of the theatrical releases, the more recent stuff, it's not great. The more classic stuff, the lighter, kind of more playful stuff, but it's very James Bond in that way that you're like you're in Monaco, you're jumping all over the globe for all of these heists, and you just show up there.
It's like you don't worry about how you got there unless it's just like like push a marker across a map or that kind of thing, and it's like now we're here. Yeah, you focus on the action, but kind of like any other IP game, if you're not playing the actual characters from Lupin, why are you playing a Lupin game? if you are, but I think like the episodic or job-based nature of the show lends itself to, okay, well, here's a job we just didn't see in the series, right? Or this takes place between, if you're a real fan, this takes place between episode whatever and whatever, let's fill in those details. So,
Yeah, that's true. So, that could be a really fun thing. And it's still mind-boggling that that's a 50-year-old character. I mean, that's really crazy. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that coffee table book, and so that'll be all be produced in English because of. So they're probably also doing stuff in Japan as well, and Magnetic Press Play is currently in the middle of their Kickstarter for Carbon Gray.
Oh, right.
And I took a look at that. They're going all out. I mean, it's a nice hardcover, like over 300-page source book. They're doing an omnibus kind of graphic novel of the comics that were published with Image, and they're doing a box, like a not collector's box, but like a total box of everything. They're producing miniatures and maps, like hex-based miniatures, their own kind of thematic, kind of diesel punk looking dice for the D6 system, just all out. And they're also going to release the STLs for the miniatures.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
that's cool.
They're doing a lot of production for this game. It was a successful, I think, comic series, but it was a few years back, like 2017 or something, 2016. So it's not new, and but they're really reinforcing. And I read a little bit of the on Comixology. There's a couple of anthologies of just the very short stories. The setting is very unique because it's diesel punk kind of World War I, but there's this alien stone, like alien rock that hit the earth and kind of splintered. And there's mythology based around this. One of these European families is tracing their bloodline from an ancestor that was struck with one of these stones and became this, like, heroic, like kind of a superhero figure. But then there's also suggestions in the story that that never happened, that it's not true. Their bloodline is a complete fabrication.
Okay.
And so it's very complicated, but it also makes the magic system. So these stones can kind of create these time anomalies. And so the technology, the World War I technology, kind of gets weirdly implemented because people can call technology into existence from the future.
Okay.
And so you have like modern firearms. So it's a really weird pastiche of kind of diesel punk, but with some really weird, like modern machine guns and some, some of the equipment and things are just. So it has, I think stylistically, it was kind of chosen as a style. So as a game, it'll be fun to see how they implement that because the magic is basically time and matter control.
Interesting.
It's not fireballs and stuff. Yeah. So they definitely did the setting for how cool that was going to look, and it was a fun, interesting idea. But what is that like to play as a game?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's really fun and very more like a European comic, more bande dessinée, looking in the very heavily produced style, big tits, blood and guts, big guns. So it and the funny thing is the original, it's all sold out and out of print, but the original is still available in French on Comixology. So it must have done well in Europe. Wow. But it's really fun, pulpy, over the top stuff, but with a really strange world, because these stones are kind of called demons and things into existence too. Not quite like kind of like these bloody-faced werewolf creatures and things. Okay. Yeah, so it's a really odd mix. There's nothing kind of predictable. Like they subvert, they kind of subvert everything. The only thing that it has is kind of World War, early 20th century Europe is the only thing that's kind of you've seen before and is kind of consistent. But they keep subverting it with really weird, really weird time stuff and
I'm going to have to look at that.
Yes. Take a look at what they put in that box. That's an insane amount of stuff to produce for an unproven, RPG.
But I think
good system. But
we've kind of talked about it before, but this is on Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
So I think, or my feeling is, this is kind of what Kickstarter is meant for.
Yes.
Right? Like, even though this is like a company, right there, and they have resources, like they're kind of new to a field. So Kickstarter is a tool for them to say, here's this thing we want to make. We need your help to do it. If you think this is cool, great. We now get to make this thing everyone thinks is cool. Instead of, like after a certain point, I think companies should kind of need to absorb that risk on themselves instead of continuing to go to the well that is Kickstarter. But here's a case where I think it's like, this is great. This thing would not be made in its state without help.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Let's go.
Yeah, they would have just released a source book. Yeah, and
Right.
they wouldn't have maybe been able to even reprint the omnibus. So that just as a set would be really nice, because the source book, even if you're not going to play the game, is so much of the lore, and then you have the story that they produced so far in the comics. So if that setting is appealing to you, you got a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to go through. So
Cool.
yeah, I was impressed. Yeah, with what they're doing. So yeah, they're cooperating and doing anniversary productions for Japanese characters and making RPG systems for them, which hasn't been done in the U.S. Previously to any
Well, I was trying to think. I'm sure there's some kind of
well,
Gundam
in the
nonsense.
80s there's a
Right.
lot of black and white kind of, but I mean this is going to be a pretty heavy celebration of that character. So they're moving really hard into some of these deals. Yeah, I think there's a ton of oddball 90s
I'm
anime
sure, yeah.
stuff.
Oh, hey, why did I forget? I had the fucking Bubblegum Crisis anime book, or the TTRPG books, which actually weren't terrible at the time. Looking at them now, I'm like, why are there so many goddamn skills? And
Right.
the thing is about this, right? It's about kind of action and being in a hard suit and blowing up rogue boomers and why is there an academic skill? You're never going to use it, right? All these things. Yeah. Anyway,
The skills are just what motorcycles and guitars. is
that's all you
basically-
need, really. Motorcycles, guitar, and hard suit control. Anything else, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a very 90s book. I used it for source information when I was trying to make a Cortex Prime
right.
conversion. But I'm like, wow, half this stuff you just don't fucking need. Right? Anyway, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, the speaking of anime adaptions.
Oh, no.
So
Okay.
previously, in 2019 in Japan, there was a TTRPG system, and I'm not sure. It's not clear. I haven't seen the actual system, and people don't have. There's never been an English translation until now.
Spoilers.
But Goblin Slayer, which started out as a series of light novels, which I don't think people quite got, and it opens, especially the anime, opens a little hard.
Okay.
And it's basically a total party kill is the first scene of the anime. And realistically, if you kind of sat back and thought about, okay, what would happen if your party got wiped out? They would just be slaughtered and lay on the ground, and the monsters would go on with their business.
Right.
No.
No. Oh, no. I'm kind of afraid where this goes. All right.
Yeah, so the monsters, so in this world, the world of Goblin Slayer, the monsters need humans, and especially human females,
Oh, no. Where is this going?
to reproduce. So the English
Out. I'm out.
the English translation never uses the R word, right? So they are suggesting that, and they're saying, well, that's how they reproduce, but they always use the term playthings. The conquered heroes become their playthings because they don't want to be too exact.
Right.
So that's the first thing that happens, and that's how they want you to hate the goblins, right?
Okay.
And so the Goblin Slayer is this goblin obsessed adventurer that all he does is kill goblins. He takes these jobs that are only about slaughtering goblins, and he very quickly shows, and we have to hunt down their children and beat their children to death because they're just going to grow up to become,
Wow. Okay. We've now strayed into the age-old TTRPG question: is it all right for a paladin to slaughter orc babies? Right. We've. Hey, if you ever wanted to answer that question, this apparently is the light novel series for you. My God. All right. Continue.
But it does. But so it starts out like that. But I think it's trying to set it. It's not a parody, or it's talking about how ridiculous that setting is, and the series continues to do that. Continues to look at it from a distance and say, yeah, we take all this stuff for granted, but this is really ridiculous. Doing this is ridiculous, and if this is your job, it's ridiculous. So characters lose their weapons or things happen, and it's oh my God, what do I do now? We didn't complete this quest. We don't get any money, and I just lost my axe. And okay,
I'm done.
Yeah, what do we do? So it keeps kind of making fun of that, and I think people were just so, oh my God, from the first episode and how they set things up, that it never recovered. I don't think people.
Well,
so, and in Japan though, that's not, oh my God, that is not blinding. People, there is so much in Japanese entertainment. It's either very blushing, slowly kissing school children, or it's full out tentacle attack. Yeah.
Right.
So that's it. It's either 1 or 1,000. There's not in between. So people tolerate.
This level goes to 1,000. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
So people tolerate that and are not blinded by that, because that's a big part of the adult entertainment, here, and it's not illegal. It's illegal to depict that in the U.S. So adapting this for the U.S. is weird. The curious thing about this, though, it looks like it's a 2d6 system, and people are curious if this is actually Sword World. So the most popular kind of fantasy RPG system in Japan is Sword World, and it's never been translated. It is like more popular than D&D here, and never been exported in any way. So and that may be also what they're imitating, what the show or the light novels and the anime are imitating is that system and that world.
Interesting. Okay.
And not actually D&D, but Sword World is based off of D&D, so like everything, but so this is a curious thing. So the reaction online is clutching and, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing I've ever seen. But kind of missing the point. Like, they are really trying to criticize, like, you're taking a lot of things for granted, and these tropes and things you're thinking of, let's look at that again, because it's messed up,
Right.
And from like a Japanese
satire is really hard to do, right? And
especially cross-culturally.
Oh yeah. I hadn't even considered that. Yeah, but like, that's just an extra spanner in the works. But satire is hard to do because you have to make it painfully clear that what you're doing is satire. Otherwise, it becomes emulation.
Yes.
And like, my reaction initially was, as everyone could see, like, yeah, okay, let's tap out on this, right? Like, if you kind of went like an Alien, like all caps style of reproduction, well, okay, then it becomes a lot more of a commentary on stuff. But if you're just like, oh yeah, we use humans for reproduction, except the dudes, then it's just like, really, we're doing this, right? So yeah, like, there is that, you have to clearly show that things are parody or satire. Again, a bit of a tangent here. I think possibly that's becoming possibly harder and harder to do as kind of normal comedy becomes more and more not extreme, because that's not the word I'm looking for, but like, even on social media, right? Things with all like the disinformation and stuff that's going on, you're like, this is reality.
Yeah.
Where like that headline's actually real, where at one time it would have been something seen on The Onion, right? So I think that's part of the reason where I myself also sometimes have trouble differentiating between what is satire and what's just people being fucking dumb, right? Or so I think that possibly made this even a harder sell, right? And also, let's be honest, like, the fact that it is satire might go over some people's heads, and then you get the I'm into this people reading it, right? Which kind of muddies things even more.
And that that's kind of unavoidable, because if someone is not going to see your extreme, like, look at how extreme this is. Oh no, that's just about right. That's
then you're like, I did not.
So it's hard, and it's hard because we can't. People are exposed to so much now, and people are fetishizing and internalizing so much that they're seeing in the outside world. That it is hard. There was recently the Karakawa president, I think, made some weird statement in an interview where he said, well, you might actually agree with him, but the industry didn't. He said, I think we need to start censoring and kind of toning down what we're doing in manga and anime because it's not friendly to Google and Apple's, streaming services and things, and we want to get, our books and our animation on this platform. So let's kind of take it easy, guys. And, Karakawa is a huge publisher, and the whole industry, a lot of writers and artists just freaked out and said, what are you talking about? I mean, Japan is one of the last places where people completely freely, are completely creatively free and don't have any weird, politically they can't talk about much. But as far as just like, imagination and fantasy and storytelling, like Japan is still very unharnessed compared to a lot of the rest of the world, the kind of requirements that publishers and editors are putting on people. So like, we can't destroy this. Like, we can't, to join this global market, we can't destroy this. And the president apologized and took like a 20% pay cut for like 3 months to show that he was actually like, sorry that he was going to ruin that he was going to ruin the
industry.
Yes.
Well, I don't agree with censorship, right? So I kind of don't agree with him. I also wonder if, tangent again, we're kind of talking about Japan, because we live here. I kind of wonder if, like you said, we can't talk about stuff politically because politically Japan's still pretty either like, okay, not compared to some other places, but kind of regressive and backwater when it comes to like rights and stuff.
Mm.
But in terms of like major publishing companies, you're probably right? You can publish stuff that wouldn't make it onto Google or Apple.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that is... I don't think censorship is a valid claim. I wonder if those two things are connected, right? Like, we kind of can't do stuff politically, so we can do it creatively. And aren't we lucky that there aren't those clamps on publishing that other countries have?
Mm-hmm.
But with the rise of independent publishing, I don't really think that's a barrier anymore, right? Like, sure, if you want to go through like major channels, okay, you're going to have to jump through hoops and kind of conform to what people want.
Japan,
but
that's all that there is, you know.
I'm sure that's all that there is. I wonder if independent publishing will start to catch on.
It hasn't in any industry. It hasn't. I mean, there's a little bit of like indie game development, but it's really creative people, but they're kind of it's not. Yeah, it's very different. It's very different how stifled the kind of. There's no underground comedy. There's no not really underground comics or anything. Like, you get published by one of the you get discovered and published, or you're just self-publishing. Yeah, it's it feels a lot different. A lot different than the U.S. because you have to kind of do your own thing if you want, an unaltered voice.
Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I would. Back to the game.
Oh yes. Goblin Slayer.
What's this being put out on? Is this a Kickstarter?
It's going to be a public. No, it's going to. No, Yen Press is going to just translate. They already do translations of light novels and animes.
Okay.
They localize. They basically localize content, and so they saw this and said, "Well, I think maybe they did the light novels, so they're like, let's do the RPG."
Okay, that makes sense.
That goes along with it.
I would be curious, from like a game standpoint, kind of like you brought up, what is this game like? And if it is a 2D6 thing, like you said, is it just Sword? Was it Sword Quest?
Sword World.
Thank you. I was thinking of something else. Is it just a translated Sword World that we never saw before?
Right.
Which in itself would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But like, if this is a fairly well-known IP, then wrapping the game in this IP makes it more noticeable and possibly more appealing to certain people.
Maybe.
Yeah, based on what we discussed. I don't know if I want to associate with said people, but...
Yeah, how much XP is child murder?
I don't know. My goodness. If that's a table in the game, just out. No, right? But, again, games certainly do have potential to show how ridiculous things are. There was... Oh, I forget who made it, but one of the earliest... independent, possibly through itch games I bought was, I forget the title. It was something like, nope, it's slipping out of my head. I want to say like Sexy World or something. And the point was, it took Dungeon World, right? And it said, now you can play like the typical female characters. But it changed things in such a way that, like, the female characters, one of their moves, like, you didn't have an interaction move. You had a, convince guy to do this thing for you, right? And it's like, you didn't have a sort, like, it very clearly through mechanics said, look at how ridiculous the normal tropes of, like, female fantasy characters are by kind of forcing you to play that. Like, your moves got replaced with these things that were clearly about, like, using your assets, right? To do it. And I think that I'll have to dig it up. I think that was an example of the game clearly conveying how ridiculous this topic was, and let's explore how ridiculous this thing is by playing it. The author had a preface saying this is the intent of the game, right? So I think sometimes you have to make that explicitly clear by saying, my game's about this. It's not emulation. Right.
Well, when did we, I don't know if it's a recent thing, but when did we stop trusting everyone's intent? When were we just you're just everything's a dog whistle. Everything is like you're just trying to sneak in your creepy politics into everything. Like, no one trusts anyone's intention for doing anything creative anymore.
Unfortunately, I think you kind of have to, right? Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm now on to chapter 16 of The Chessmen of Mars. I've now consumed 7.5 Edgar Rice Burroughs books. And woof!
Yeah.
I'm sure, pulp is very formulaic.
Right.
It's commercial. You're paid by the word, or you were paid by the word. and I'm sure it was meant to appeal to a certain type of audience. After 5 books, 4.5, of the Barsoom series and other series, I'm starting to think Edgar Rice Burroughs didn't respect women very much, right?
Well, did anyone at that time?
I don't know. But like similar to what you said about like in this like Goblin Quest. Okay, Chessmen of Mars. After an interminably long time, we finally get to the chess game part. It's 2 sides playing real people chess. And the winner is going to get the Princess of Helium, right? Who's been captured in this other one, right? The game that's being played, one side is a group, right? It's all these like slaves and criminals, right? Whoever wins gets these 2 princesses. And like in 1930s speak, they very clearly say the side is going to get to like claim these 2 princesses as their slaves for pleasure and to be used however they see fit. And I'm like, oh, I see exactly what you're saying here in 1930s language.
Right. Yeah, but at the same time, you wouldn't overanalyze like a what is that the bustier tearing
Bodice Ripper
bodice ripper romance novels on that same level as women's like weird perversions and like these pulp, I think, and especially that is a men's audience targeted to like stimulate the yes I will I could be this hero, this aspirational like I can do anything, and then you go back to your crappy little office job.
Oh, absolutely.
So so it has that the kind of matching component of that is like the crazy content of a romance novel,
right?
And it kind of works in that same way. I mean, it doesn't have the it's not as titillating, but it is with its violence and its like man's power. And
it is,
Not, and so there's not as much sexual content, but there is a lot more of the kind of upping men's opinions of themselves.
You're right. No, that's exactly right. And like that's why I say like it's commercial and it's targeting a specific audience, and it's kind of formulaic, and that's what it's meant to do. But I think kind of like any commercial art, the hang-ups and interests and fetishes of the author are still going to come through. Is what I'm saying. And after like 8 books of Edgar Rice Burroughs, I'm like, I'm picking up a trend with this dude and what he finds attractive and not, and how he views society and how he's like presenting like, there's a couple lines about like, look how feminine this dude is with his fancy clothes and whatever, and this like we much more prefer the masculine kind of thing. I'm like, oh, all right, I see what you're doing. But anyway.
Interesting.
Back to games.
Yeah, back to games. Oh, speaking of games,
yes,
this just arrived in a very heavy package. So
that is huge.
This is actually a D6, but it's also a miniature. So this is the Gelatinous Cube D6 that was produced by Severed Books in the Kickstarter for the Dead Milkman Bitch and Chimera module that they produced. So this thing finally arrived, and as you notice, it's
like I thought it was going to be hollow. It's not. It's like a solid cube of acrylic, and it is heavy. If you whip that at someone's head, they would potentially die.
But I was so happy. This just gave me so much joy. Usually, like novelty dice and like some silly things. It's just like, what would you do with that way? This is like, I just want to have this around. I just love how this looks, and it's just got a funny sense of humor, and a really nice execution because you can see the bloody stuff through it at every angle. So it
cool.
looks full of skulls and discarded weapons.
I didn't examine it that closely, but the skulls are the pips.
Yes,
and then there's like adventurer gear kind of scattered around.
Right.
It looks like each face is potentially a different class.
Oh, it could.
Because I saw like a wizard hat, and like here's some like maybe like a dagger,
right.
and like
because there's a bard. Yeah, this is a bard, and
there's the loot and stuff. Yeah,
you may be
LUTE, not LOOT.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That could be very true. Yeah. So it's very and so they're continuing. So they have an Etsy store. So if you look up Severed Books, they have an Etsy store where they produce a lot of these sorts of things. They have some blood-filled dice now and things. That they're
actually liquid filled?
No, they're the plastic, but they have like drips of blood kind of floating inside. So they do some nice kind of complimentary kind of novelty stuff. But it's really charming stuff. It's really I was surprised how much I liked this as an object. And I usually don't go for that kind of stuff, but when that was on the Kickstarter, I'm like, and the shipping was like insanely reasonable for just a cube of acrylic.
A cube of acrylic, as one would hope,
halfway across the world.
Yeah,
but. So that's what this is and where that's from. So this will always be near me in some way if I need to keep track of 1 through 6 in some way. So where can people find you?
On Twitter, as always. That's Hivemind, HYVEMYND, where I'm remembering all the board game ideas I had after going through the Game Crafter website and seeing all like the options they do. And it's almost become a little mini game for me to make sort of pretend components to see how much it would be. It would cost me to like produce or manufacture some of the game ideas I have.
Right.
And it's unfortunately sometimes not cheap. And then like you're like, okay, well, there's 18 cards on this sheet and only 12 on this, and let's see how many I can get. And yeah, anyway. So if you find that fun, that's where you can see me do that stuff.
The game has become the game.
Exactly. Damn. All right, new game idea. You're making a game. Yeah. Anyway, so where can people find you?
Every week I do a live stream of my cartoon, Domestic Abuse. And so that's Abuse Cartoons on Twitch and YouTube. And you can find everything at gocomics.com/domestic abuse. And this podcast and YouTube channel is Upturned Table. And you can find us at upturntable.com on everything on social media at Upturned Table. And we do this every Friday at lunchtime in Japan. So Thursday evening, North American time.
Yep.
And you can also support us by becoming a weekling on Upturned Table or on patreon.com/Upturned Table. And we do this every week. So please come back next week and we'll do this all again.
Thank you. Later, mortals.
Goodbye. Oh, let's do our 20 seconds.
Okay.
Just remember. So if you've got 20 seconds, let's do 20 seconds. So this is for making the podcast a little bit more listenable. We'll take the AC sound out of the audio. So here's some moment of silence.
I think that was 20 seconds.
Yeah, you're right. 36 seconds, as a matter of fact. All right. So thanks. So yeah, that'll help us improve the audio, and it just looks weird at the end of the YouTube. All right. Yeah. So we should be getting our music back within a month. So listen for that. Cool. And so we'll see you guys next week. And hey, K5, Joe, and Rev, thanks for showing up in the chat. Appreciate you guys watching. And let's show the chat. We will do this again. So take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.